and
Okay. Okay. Um, I'm VeeCee Spear, and I'm a legal assistant with the Barnett and Leuty law firm. And what we specialize in is helping families that have care needs for their seniors or family members. And we have several different things that we do to help those families. We help them with financial planning and helping them to be able to conserve assets or utilize assets. And we help them to be able to access the Medicaid system. And Medicaid is, in Austin anyway, it pays for 24-hour skilled nursing. And there's a lot of people that don't understand Medicaid. I worked for the state of Texas for 20 years in Medicaid, and I worked in policy, which means I made the rules.
oh,
And and so I have a great understanding of the rules for Medicaid. And many people that I talk to, they are getting rules from their friends or families or someone that they met in the supermarket. And that's not good because the rules are different in each state, number one. And so if someone came here from another state, their rules don't apply. We get our rules from the same source, which is from the federal government, and each state adapts the rules that they can finance and utilize. And so new rules made unless our legislature is in session. And of course, their session is just ending. And I admit I have not looked to see if they made any changes to long-term care. There are just so few changes made because it's such a big deal. But many of your skilled nursing facilities have Medicaid beds. And in looking for a place to utilize the Medicaid program, that's one of your number one things is that you have to find if the provider has Medicaid certified beds. And then we have a lot of other requirements. Of course, they have to have a medical necessity, which means they have a medical need for 24-hour care. They also must, if they're not 65 years old, they have to have a disability determination from Social Security to qualify for the program. And then you get into there's a lot of financial requirements.
Mhm.
And the financial requirements vary so much because if you're an individual that needs to go to a nursing facility, you can only have $2,000 in total assets to qualify. And that's what we do. We help you to realize that you can meet that eligibility many times by gifting your assets. Now, if you're a real planner and you're getting older and you want to start making plans, then come in and make your plans before you need it. Because Medicaid has a 5-year look back on gifting. Now, that means there are other things that they can spend their money down on. Depends on what kind of money they have and what kind of family situation. Because if they have kids or grandkids, you can establish 529 accounts, which means you give your grandkids or great grandkids educational funds. there's actually no penalty on that. So, and then you can also purchase your final expenses for a pre-need care or whatever your pre-need situation. There's just a lot of different ways you can spend it down, but it doesn't necessarily all have to be spent on them. Many times they've sold their home. Well, your home is typically exempt, but Texas does have to meet the requirements of all of the other 50, all the 50 states have, is a Medicaid estate recovery program. So if they've been living off of a meager income, they've had to spend all their money to just live, and they don't have any money, but they own their home. Remember that home is exempt for Medicaid. But while they're in that nursing facility, Medicaid is keeping a tab of how much they're spending. Because when you typically are in a facility, you pay whatever your income is for your care. It doesn't matter if you make $500 a month from Social Security or if you have a nice retirement. You pay whatever your income is for your care. So if grandmother only got about $500 a month, she doesn't have any savings, she doesn't have any oil or mineral rights, she doesn't have any life insurance policies, and she goes into the facility, but she still owns her home, then they're keeping a tab of how much Medicaid paid for her care. At the time that she goes to heaven, then Medicaid sends you a bill to the courts. So when you go to probate, they get all of that expense that they paid out of the house. Now, Texas was the 50th state to sign on to that. We had to sign on to the Medicaid estate recovery program because we didn't get federal funding anymore if we didn't. And Medicaid is 60% funded by federal funds and 40% by state funds. So it was incredibly important to our budget for us to participate. But in the meantime, Texas statutes now have what's called a ladybird deed. That ladybird deed enables you to deed your property to whomever you want to have it, whoever your beneficiaries are. And that what that deed does is it sits there. You still, if it's my house, I still have the right to sell it. I have the right to get a reverse mortgage if I want to. I have the right to do anything on that house that I want to. But then when I go to heaven, that house becomes my son's, my beneficiary. And in doing the ladybird deed, you avoid probate. When you avoid probate, then the state has no way to get your house. So it's very important that you make note of that. That's probably one of the most beneficial things that you can ever do is on your property, do a ladybird deed. Because otherwise you have to go to probate when you have property. So that's a real big thing. So if you have other assets, now when you have a situation where you have a couple, one goes to the nursing facility and one remains at home. Then we can save all the assets. Some of the families we deal with have $1 million worth of assets. But the state of Texas allows that community spouse to take advantage of that because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. we don't know when or how long that spouse is going to be alive. So we have the ability to save all the assets for them until such time that they go to heaven. So that is an incredibly complicated type situation. But in situations like that, see, we can do the ladybird deed to either deed their, when in Texas, it's community property. So, both own the house. So what's easy is when you, oh, I'm sorry, I've got my phone. I had it on silent, but it came alive, didn't it? And, but you can, on the ladybird deed, the one that goes to the nursing facility can actually give their half to their spouse. And then once your spouse is in the nursing facility, maybe you don't want to live there any longer. You don't want to do the yard and the maintenance on the house and everything. Well, once they get on the Medicaid program, because we gave the spouse remaining at home, we gave them entire ownership of the house. You can sell the house, use the money to pay for whatever you want. If you want to live in an apartment, if you want to travel, whatever, you still have that money there available for the community spouse. And it will, we actually have Keith is our attorney, and then Mike Smith is our financial guy, and he can help you set that up in a trust and actually start your look back for you to get on Medicaid in 5 years. And you can, if it's been 5 years, you can save all your assets. So there's a lot of things about Medicaid that people don't know. And probably that's one of the most important ones, is that if you do planning in advance, you don't have to spend down any of your money. And of course, some people say, well, if you're on Medicaid, you don't get the good care. Well, that's just not right, because the caretakers know nothing about your financials. They don't know if you're private pay or if you're on Medicaid. They treat everybody the same because they're all there in the same place. And it's all the 31 years now I've worked in Medicaid, and I just never hear complaints on care. We would hear complaints on bookkeepers, but we just didn't get complaints on care, because the people that I have run into that work in the facilities are there because they love what they do, and they love our seniors, and they love caring for them. And so, now that we're kind of opening up and people are being admitted again and not so afraid of COVID, because it seems like the vaccine is working quite well for many people. It's always one of those situations where I like for you to be able to go and visit the facility and see what you think about it. Because I can't possibly tell anyone where to go. I can say they're all wonderful, and I hear wonderful things, and I'm in every one of them, and I see great things happening. But it seems like when you find the right place, you just get that warm, fuzzy feeling. And that's the right place for your loved one. So, there's a lot to Medicaid. When you have the Medicaid program, you still keep your Medicare. And like I say, you'll just make your payment, whatever the income is. Now, in the case of a couple, many times there's a big difference in the amount of income one or the other gets. And so the state actually has a provision for that. And they allow, like if the husband made $2,500 a month and the wife only made $500 a month, then the state of Texas allows us to to give to the spouse in the community enough money for her to have $3,259 to live on. So that would mean if she only had 500 coming in and he had 2,500, then we would divert the entire 2,500 that the husband had to the wife for her to have money to live on. So there's a whole lot of different little aspects, and that's all part of the rules that people don't understand and don't know about with Medicaid. But, you know, the main thing you have to remember is, you know, your home can be exempt, but typically you can only have $2,000 in total asset. And in the case of the spousal, even, we have the ability to transfer all of the resources to the spouse. Texas allows us to do that, even though we have community property laws. The Medicaid rules allow us to divert all the assets to the spouse that remains at home. So that gives them, we keep them one little bank account usually that their money goes into every month. And then we keep that at or below $2,000. And so that helps them to meet the eligibility guidelines. So am I lost? Have I lost everybody?
I had a question on the Ladybird deed. Do you have to do that prior to going into skilled nursing, or can you do that at any time?
Anytime. You can do that. You know, I'm not in one, and I can do a Ladybird deed. And it's, you know, I kind of don't have a lot of assets, but my son is actually owner on my bank accounts, and so my house is like my only other big asset. So if he's already owner on my bank accounts, and I should die, then if I have the Ladybird deed, we don't even have to probate my will because I don't have anything else.
Do they have to be owner on your bank account, or can they just be on your bank account with equal access?
Typically, you need to talk to your bank about that.
Gotcha.
If you're just a signer, you're not an owner. And they'll tell you to come back after probate is what we hear. But you need to take that up with your bank so that you know what your situation's going to be.
Okay.
You know, we always recommend that everybody have a will, because you don't know what's going to happen. Many times, even when all the years I worked in Medicaid, we would have people that lived in the nursing home that maybe their sibling passed away and left them the farm, and they would get inheritances there even. So if you don't have a will, you know, then you still, whether you have a will or not, you have to go to probate if you own property. Probate means that if you have a will, you get to decide where everything goes. If you don't have a will, then the judge decides that. So it's incredibly important to have that will as well. Because there's, and you know, sometimes we have run into people that maybe they were not living near their parents for many years, and they really didn't know what kind of assets they had. And my parents were the old-fashioned kind. They didn't want to talk about money.
Yes.
And come to find out, my dad's mom had some mineral rights, and nobody knew anything about them. But I saw there was in the treasury, there was some funds in there for my grandmother. Well, you know how oil companies are. They're not going to let that little thing hold them up that they don't know where grandmother was and get her to sign a division order. They just set up an escrow account, and that's what they had done. She was an heir to her dad's mineral rights that he kept when he sold his farm many years ago. And so the oil company goes in and they start drilling. They're just putting an escrow account for her because they don't know where she is and can't find her. And then it pops up in the, in the US, in the Texas Treasury as the unclaimed funds. So you need to look in there every now and then, or if you have people that live in other states, to be sure that they haven't missed something like that. Because we probably never would have known about grandmothers, because, grandpa died so many years ago that we didn't have any idea what they had done with that. And so if you don't have a will in those situations, you have to actually go to probate to be able to access those, because they're not going to give it to you without probate. So it's really neat. Our legal documents information is so important. It's important for many, many reasons. And if you do opt to do a financial plan where you want to set up a trust, or you want to set up gifting or whatever, if you don't have a power of attorney and your family member is not able to take care of their finances, then you're just sunk. You can't do anything. So it's incredibly important that you get that financial power of attorney, because that could mean the difference in you being able to pay daddy's bill at the nursing home or whatever. Because if you're not on their bank account, who's gonna pay the bills if they can't? So, and that's kind of what we do here at the firm. We sit down with you and we talk about legal documents, because that is so important to be able to take care of them medically. You've got to have the medical power of attorney. And you have to be careful on that, because you can, if they can't make their decisions on their medical care, then you would have to make that decision. Now, we build in a HIPAA release on ours, so that also gives you the opportunity to make an informed decision, because you can see the medical records. It's like, do we take off their leg? Well, I don't know what's wrong with them. You want to see the medical records to see what the situation is. And then if it's falling to you to be responsible for it because they can't, then you've got to have the documents there for you to be able to take care of that. And it's the same with the finances. If you don't have the financial power of attorney and you haven't made the provisions, then, and we see this more often, like when somebody's been in an accident or has a sudden illness and no one has the power of attorney, and to get a guardianship is usually a lengthy process. So that means if you have a husband and wife, and if you don't have a power of attorney for him, you may not be able to get the company to process his disability claim or whatever. If you don't have, and that's what couples usually do. They do powers of attorney for each other, and then you do backup.
Power of attorneys on each other.
And then you do backups, obviously, in case your spouse wasn't able to. We always recommend backups. So be sure you understand that if someone is getting near the point that they need care, don't give anything away, because that will preclude them from getting Medicaid. Because typically, if you give gifts, and especially if you give gifts of money, it's spent. So some parents, sometimes they say, well, the feds say you can give $14,000 a year. Well, that's they do say that, but Medicaid doesn't. Medicaid, you can't give gifts for 5 years unless you talk to me and we're like doing an educational fund or something, or you realize that you could have to give it back to meet the Medicaid requirements. But if they do need to give gifts, let's structure it and do it so that we still have enough to pay their daily rate while because they could be in a penalty period. And that's what happens if it hasn't been 5 years and you gift, then you can still get Medicaid. We just have some penalty time wherein you pay the daily rate. They can still get on Medicaid. We can still, if we've got them below $2,000, we can still get them on Medicaid. And if they've given financial gifts or given away like the house to somebody, you have penalties for that. And what that means is that you pay the daily rate at the facility. So you have to leave enough money to pay that for the penalties for gifting. And that's kind of what we do is we can say, well, if they have $100,000, we can usually keep our gift to the family about 60,000 of 100,000. That's kind of an average. So then that would leave you 40,000 to pay their daily rate for their penalty period.
So, VeeCee, just a quick question, if I may. Am I on mute? Yeah, okay. So, two very quick things to reiterate. We have our son on our bank account as payable on death. Would it be better to make him an owner, or can I
Not
leave?
necessarily. Pay on death is good.
Okay.
Pay on death is good. But be sure that he has access in case you were not able to take care of it.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily, usually now on my parents, I was an owner. I became an owner on theirs. But, that can have drawbacks too, because if they don't have good credit and they get in a lawsuit or something, they can actually attach your bank account for their creditors.
Okay.
Or got in an accident in a lawsuit.
Whoa, that's good.
Okay. All right. The other quick question was regarding the look back and all that. So when is the right time then, and I may have missed it, when is the right time then in order to start that 5-year look back period? So if I went and set up a trust, or I have the will already, but whatever, get all my documents in place and do all my gifting of all my millions to everybody. And then after that, I should do what? Do I apply for Medicaid 5 years after that?
Yes.
Okay.
After the assets were actually placed in the trust.
Okay. Okay.
Because sometimes people set up their trust and they put their money in there, and then later the house sells and then they put the house in there. Well, then that's kind of starting your look back all over again. But that's usually most people do it pretty quickly. So we start an initial look back. But we typically put them into a trust, and then that trust is there so that your family members can access that if they need it for your care. It's not accessible to you, but it would be accessible to your trustee. And then your trustee is supposed to be diligent with how the money is spent in the trust. And typically, if we have a couple, we set a trust up in both their names. And then when the second one dies, then you disperse. And see, that's another benefit of a trust, is it doesn't go to probate. Probate is public. And sometimes that's detrimental if you have, a spouse that's living alone and maybe they're older, when it's made public and someone knows that you've got $1 million now, then believe it or not, people prey on those people. But if you have all of your assets in a trust, that's dispersed from the trust. It's not public. It's never made public. And so that protects you in that manner as well.
Have you been here before?
Never knew that. Thank you.
Yes, yes. That's a great benefit. And what we
You
do
know what building it is?
are irrevocable
Because
trusts.
we're coming up on, I think it's that.
And
Is it
so
that?
the irrevocable trust means that it is not available to the one who owns the trust. It's out of your reach. When you're young, you make family trusts. Those are revocable family trusts, and you put your money in there. Well, that's still available to you. So that doesn't count. All of those assets in that trust are still available to you if it's a family trust or a living trust or a revocable trust. Medicaid is kind of a special kind of trust in the irrevocable trust because that and that causes hesitation for some people, because you do, when you name your trustee, you want to name someone that you can depend on to do the right thing. You do have a duty by law, to be able to manage the trust equitably. And usually that's enough. But we've had families come in that say, we have 5 kids, not one of them can I trust. Well, but maybe they have a friend, a childhood friend that's very trustworthy. So it takes a lot of thought and planning to actually be ready for a trust.
Thank you, VeeCee. I think there's a question. Was there a question out there? No?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you name someone for the trust, can it be more than one? Say, I have 4 children. Can I put all 4 children in?
Now, you don't want to put them as the trustees, all 4 of them as the trustees, because how many times are they going to agree? You only want one.
Only
And
one.
then if she can't, maybe you put your daughter, and if she's out of the country and your son is next, then she can, defer to him because she's not able to serve at that time. So we usually do 3 or 4
Okay.
backups, but your beneficiaries can all be your 4 children equally.
Okay. And I can name one child as the trustee and then have the others as backup.
Yes. Yes,
List them backup. Okay.
absolutely. Uh-huh.
Okay. Very
Did
good.
anyone else have questions? It's a very mysterious program, and it's hard to talk about it in generalities. What we do here in our office is we do a free intake for every family. All you have to do is give us a call, get on our schedule. We have a large conference room. We can safely distance. We can even do Zoom calls. It's a little complicated, but we talk about, you bring your legal documents. Keith will look at those and be sure they're in order. Bring your financial stuff, and we will figure what you need to do for your individual situation. And then we have Mike Smith. He doesn't work for the firm, but he offices here. And you can tell me I have some stocks and bonds and I have some IRAs. Well, I can give you a number that you need to be at, but I don't have a clue how to manipulate your money to where you get to where you need to be. So we have Mike Smith, and that's what he spent his life doing, is managing investments. And he can help you. he also, because trusts are different, he also can help you with managing your money that's within your trust, because you have different tax laws. A trust is like another person. So that's like you gave your money to another person when you put it in the trust. So he is our expert on that. And we looked high and low, and we got the best one to work with us, let me tell you. And so we welcome everybody to come, and we can tell you what your options are. And then we want you to make the decision that's going to be best for your family. But we want you to know what your options are on all of that.
I have a question about the trust. If for it to be for Medicaid to not count all those assets in a trust, it has to be irrevocable.
It has
If it's
to
a
be.
revocable trust, Medicaid would still consider the
Okay, and
asset.
then you still, on an irrevocable, you still have that 5-year look back. But like I said, with the spousal case, the spouse that gets all of the assets given to her or him after the Medicaid starts, then the spouse can put all the assets into a trust. An irrevocable trust would be great then, and then you start your 5-year look back.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, VeeCee. Is there anything else that we should have asked or that we should know?
Let me take a look at my notes. Just don't listen to anyone.
Okay.
I use my cell phone all the time, and I'll be glad to give you my cell phone number to call and ask me, because I want you to know the real answer to any of your questions. And my number is 512-229-6561.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just real quickly, so this is all in preparation to set up for the possible need of Medicaid. What?
Or the VA aid and attendance program. You have asset limits too, and they have only a 3-year look back.
For VA
Aid and attendance.
If you don't reach either one of those, what if your spouse passes and you didn't use any of those services, but how does that change all the plans that you've made in preparation?
It doesn't, because if you set up the trust is still there until the second one dies, if you have a couple. And then your assets are dispersed, like I said, not through the courts.
Okay, it just saves you from going through probate.
It does save you from going through probate. It also builds a wall around your assets too.
I like that.
So if you should get into a lawsuit or anything, those are not to be seen.
Thank you.
But Medicaid is a wonderful tool, and the private pay rate on nursing facilities is many times $8,000 or $9,000 a month. Yeah, it is very expensive. So if you can just pay your income for your care, that's the way you have to go.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference in your financial outcome. And, we would much rather you get Medicaid benefits before you have to go broke, because you don't have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you very much, VeeCee.
Okay,
learning
thank you.
a lot from you.
Thank you.
And I hope you keep safe and well. You're welcome to stay if you like, but I do understand if you have a million other things to do.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have people here
Right.
to see me.
Okay, yes. So, all right, it will be seeing Keith. I believe it's the next time or the one after.
Yes.
that. He'll be
Yes.
talking to us about legal documents because all
Yeah.
of these things are so important.
Yes,
And even if you've heard
everyone.
about- yeah, even if we've discussed legal documents in the past, there's always something else, either as a refresher or something else. Oh yeah, I didn't realize that. So it's so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Be
for us
sure
to
you
figure out-
tune into that so you know what you have or what you don't have.
Exactly. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you again, VeeCee.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay,
Good to
you
see
take
you
care.
all.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye. Okay. All right. So, yeah, she really knows